Welcome back to the unique commerce classes. In the last class we have discussed previous indirect tax system. In today's class we are going to discuss one more important concept, that is problems of indirect taxes. Problems of indirect taxes. First one, multiplicity of taxes. It means multiple levies at the center and state levels. Before the introduction of GST, various taxes were imposed by central and state governments in connection with indirect taxes. For example, custom duty, excise duty, service tax, central sales tax, VAT, luxury tax, purchase tax, electricity tax, then etc. So, large number of taxes cause inconvenience to businessmen and it affect ease of doing business. The tax rates were also different in different places, which resulted in different selling price for the same product in various states. So India was not economically unified. Next, cascading effect of taxes. Cascading effect of taxes. Cascading means tax on tax. Cascading tax or cascading tax is a turnover tax that is applied at every stage in the supply chain without any deduction for the tax paid at earlier stages. In simple word, we can say it is a tax paid again and again on the material which has already suffered tax. Next, double taxation. Under the previous taxation, both central and state governments would levy tax on the same activity. The taxable value for same would be assessed separately by both central and state governments. On the taxable value, both the governments would levy the different taxes that were resulted in double taxation. For example, or for instance, on restaurant services, both service tax and VAT was levied. Next, high cost of compliance. Under the previous indirect system, businessmen were required to file a return for each tax levied by state and central government. They were required to visit different tax offices according to the applicable laws to his business. This results in increased compliance cost and unnecessary complexity. Next, high price of goods or services. One of the major drawbacks of previous indirect tax is that cascading effect. The cascading effect and restrictive input tax credit result into increase in the price of goods and services and the burden of the tax being shifted to the consumer. Next, problem is corruption. Next, lack of uniformity of provisions in state laws. This is also important problems which were existed before the introduction of GST. The structure of VAT across states lacked uniformity. There was no uniformity in the structure of value added tax. The differences were there with respect to definition of goods, capital goods, threshold limits, classification, exemptions and procedure. It meant that there was no clear-cut definitions related to the different goods, that may be capital goods, that may be exemptions, that may be procedures. and this leads to increased complexities for corporate having operations in multiple states. One of the major disadvantages of VAT is tremendous paperwork and record keeping, and VAT system can work only if record keeping is proper and reliable. The elaborate record keeping is not possible to small business. Therefore, this is also major problems which existed before the introduction of GST. Next, inability of state to levy tax on services. These states were prevented from taxing services. This arrangement has posed difficulties in taxation of goods supplied as part of a composite works contract involving a supply of both goods and services. The services sector is growing rapidly, but the central government has fully authority to levy and collect tax on services. This results in losing the revenue by state government for not levying tax of services under the states. Next, disputes of classification and valuation. The war between tax officials and taxpayers was continuous, particularly in connection with classification and valuation of goods and services. Such disputes resulted in wastage of time, money, and energy. Next, ineligibility of input tax credit. Input tax credit means a refund of tax already paid on purchases made by them. But in the previous tax system, it was not available to service providers. Similarly, cinema dealers were unable to get credit on the inputs purchased by them under central VAT. Therefore, old tax structure was defective because it denied input tax credit benefits to some dealers. Next, complexities in tax administration. In spite of the improvements made in the tax design and administration, the systems at both, that will be central and state levels, remained complex. The systems suffer from substantial compliance gaps except in the highly organized sector of the economy. There are several factors which contributing to this unsatisfactory state of affairs. For instance, under VAT regime, each state has its own state VAT act. The procedures, returns, forms, assessments, date of payment of tax, etc. are different under state VAT acts. This makes the life much more complicated for multi-located corporate. Next, less use of technology in tax administration. Next, heavy tax burden on consumer. So these are the important problems which existed before the introduction of GST. Okay. In next class, we will discuss need for introduction of GST. Okay. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.